Hi everybody, my name is Stu Harrison and welcome back for another piano review. Today we are going to be taking a look at Kawai's K500, their 52-inch class. Technically it's just under 52 inch, but superb upright piano that's been on the market now for about 5 years. Been a huge hit with our own customer base and certainly all around the world. So for anybody who's out there researching taller upright pianos, perhaps you've got the budget for a baby grand but simply don't have the space, this is one you're going to want to have on your list. Today we are going to be talking about the sound and the features that they've got in here that contribute to that tone. We'll of course be talking about the K500's action, which some of you may have already read about, the Millennium 3 action with the extended keys. Of course I'll be sharing some thoughts on who I think this is perhaps an ideal instrument for, and both in this video as well as a separate video we'll of course be playing this piano for you so you have a chance to hear it. We are going to be recording the instrument with an AKG C414 studio microphone. That is a high quality microphone that's going to pick up the piano as true as we possibly can. We're not going to EQ it, we're not going to compress it, so that you at home are hearing as close to what we are here right in the showroom and in the studio. Thank you once again for joining us for another piano review. We're going to get started right away. The K500 is part of a class of instruments which fall into an interesting kind of gray zone. And that gray zone is this: you've obviously got enough money that you could be buying a inexpensive but still fairly good quality baby grand, but for probably a number of reasons you've decided that going with a taller upright for about the same amount of money makes more sense. There's a number of questions that we get all the time. You know, what are you giving up by going with a taller upright versus a baby grand? Well, in the case of the K500, which sits right around the low teens in terms of its price point, and of course that means on the Kawai side that could be putting you into kind of a GL10 range. On the Yamaha side you could be looking at a GB1K. There's a few products from the Samick company, you know, in their Kanabi line that you could be looking at for that price range too. So, you know, why consider something like this, and what are you giving up? Well, first of all, in a lot of cases with a 52-inch upright, you're actually getting a string length that's even longer than what you're getting in your typical 5-foot baby grand. So from a clarity standpoint, from a tonal standpoint, there's actually some benefits to going with a taller piano like that. And so for people and for teachers in particular who are recommending these types of instruments and always talking about how the longest string possible is going to deliver that clarity in the bass, well, this is actually not much of a compromise. This is actually a really strong option, and it's a way to actually get a longer string without having to increase the budget. Of course, a huge part of the cost of a baby grand or any grand piano is actually constructing that thick, sort of rounded body that surrounds the piano. So if you don't need that additional construction cost, which in this price range really is largely aesthetic, it doesn't really actually serve much of a musical purpose until you get into the higher price ranges. This you could argue is a more efficient, more cost-effective, higher value type of a purchase. In my musical opinion, honestly, the only knock against going with this type of thing dollar for dollar is that you do perhaps miss out on that aesthetic satisfaction that a baby grand might be able to give you. But musically speaking, especially if you're able to play with the lid up, or in some cases even with the front panel completely off, you're getting as much sound, and in a lot of cases a slightly clearer sound, than what you're going to get out of a 5-foot baby grand for in that $10,000 range. Let's talk about the action. Now, the K500 is part of Kawai's K series, which again has been out in its current incarnation for about 5 years. This was an update that saw a number of technical improvements to the instruments. So of course the previous generation was the K2, K3, K5, K6, K8, and now of course we've got the K200, K300, a K400, which was a new addition, K500, and K800. And so what are those changes? Well, in the K500, what we had was a lengthening of the keys. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking actually about the part that you can see or the part that your fingers actually need to touch. This is the full length of the key stick. So we're talking about the part of the key that you can't actually see. That's the other part of the teeter-totter. That's been lengthened so that the K500 has a very similar feel to a baby grand piano. That key stick is getting to be about the same length. This is a really interesting feature that Kawai's done because they're pretty unique in this price range for having put it on upright pianos. The second thing that they have done with the K500 series, which was a really interesting addition and even more unique, is the K500 actually has duplex scaling. Now, for anybody who's been researching grand pianos, you might know what duplex scaling is. That is essentially you're adding a second length of string that is allowed to essentially resonate sympathetically, and it creates some extra harmonics, and it sort of thickens and strengthens the treble tone out of a piano that has duplex scaling on it. So a lot of grand pianos from about the $20,000 range up will have that duplexing. It's actually an innovation that Steinway brought to the market well over 100 years ago, but it's pretty rare to find it on an upright. Well, the K500 actually does this, and so what you're going to notice when you play this instrument is not only does the longer bass string that we talked about going to give you a bit of a grand feel, the treble is also now giving you that thickened, strengthened tone that you would, again, expect normally out of a baby grand. So midtones are really nice and clear on the piano. But now down in the bass as well. But now when we go up to the top, there's a lot more color up there than you typically get on an upright, where it can be certainly clear and in tune, but feeling a bit narrow or feeling a little bit like of an empty sound. You're essentially just getting the fundamental with not a lot of extra color up there. So that's a little bit about the tone that we're getting. We've talked a little bit about the action that, of course, we're getting. And an update to the cabinetry as well is something that you're going to notice. The K series generally got a very nice aesthetic spruce up when they did it. They went to the full panel opening on the top, which I really liked, aesthetically speaking. They've changed the lines on the gables. They've changed the lines on the toe blocks. And it's got a super wide music stand. So this is actually wide enough to hold 5 full sheets completely spread out. Anybody who's ever had to be in a rehearsal or at home tackling one of these gigantic pieces of sheet music that just seem to go on and on and on are going to get a lot of use out of this extra wide music stand. When you compare it to what's on most upright pianos, it's pretty remarkable how additionally wide this actually is. It's probably close to 9-10 inches bigger than what you're going to find on a typical 48-inch Asian-built piano, Japanese, Indonesian, Korean, whatever. So all in all, a very capable instrument. So who is this going to be perfect for? Well, in my opinion, I think the K500 is really an ideal instrument for an up-and-coming student who is in need of a very reliable, very consistent instrument that can deliver a really big range of tone and dynamics, and quite frankly, there just isn't the space in the house to accommodate it. Musically speaking, I would say that the K500 is going to deliver a broader musical experience than a typical $10,000 baby grand piano. And as I said before, the biggest knock against it is it simply doesn't look like a baby grand. So if that's high on your list, and there's nothing wrong with that being high on your list. I know a lot of people who, and sometimes I fall into this category too, who like to think they're buying super practically, but when you're really honest with yourself, maybe you really do want the look of a baby grand. That could be the case, and of course there's lots of great grand options. But if space is limiting that, and that's not even on the table, I would suggest that parents are going to find a lot of value in this for a student that's showing quite a bit of sort of high-end playing potential. And of course, institutions who need an instrument that's going to accommodate higher level players, whether that be students or professionals, are also going to get a ton of use out of the K500. So thank you so much again for joining me for a discussion and a review of what we've got here on the K500 from Kawai. We've got the K500 in both locations at our showrooms in Oakville and Vaughan all the time. So please, if you're in the area, come and visit us. Otherwise, good luck with your shopping. Thanks so much for watching in. We'll see you back for another review shortly.